our speaker today, who is Selena Scebba.
I'm like, you gotta speak louder.
Oh, speak louder. Oh.
They can't hear you there.
Okay, I am sorry. We will try this again. Take two. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we have a great speaker today. I love seeing young blood, and I'm assuming you are much younger than a lot of us in the room. And I love that I see people that are taking on careers and will be looking after us as we get older.
Yes.
So this is Selena Scebba, and she's been a long interested in healthcare and well-being. I can't say it could be that long. And she graduated from the University of Windsor with a degree in behavioral cognition and neuroscience, and was awarded a lead medallion for her leadership, academic, and research engagements. She's a trained dancer of 16 years and later went on to teach, and has expanded her interest into weight training, kickboxing, don't make her mad, and paddleboarding, which I tried once and will never do again. I had a bruise to prove it. A recent graduate from the Schulich School of Medicine's Masters of Public Health program. And she is now working as a health promotion specialist with the Windsor Essex. Her current role for chronic disease and injury prevention in that department allows her to share her passions and interests across the community. I would strongly suggest you listen to everything this wonderful young lady says, because by listening to being healthy and reducing chronic disease, you will prevent coming to see me at work. And with that, I would like to turn the lecture to you. Thank you, Selena, for coming. This is her first Rotary meeting. Now she knows Rotary. St. Clair does not sing well, but we're welcoming her, and I think you would make a great Rotarian to think about talking to us about it more.
All right.
Okay.
All right, yes, I'm here to talk about chronic disease and injury prevention. Can everyone hear me with the mask?
Well, I don't know about
Pretty
that.
loud.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Sorry, gotta wear it, but
Yeah.
after 4:30 p.m., we'll continue with it. So,
You want the clicker?
oh, sure, yeah, thank you. Does mouse work on that one?
You just said it.
It'll go- Oh, perfect. Okay, so today we're going to talk about chronic disease. We'll talk about some common risk factors for all of them, and as well as the main part of this presentation today is how we can prevent these chronic diseases. But first, I want to talk about risk factors and the kinds that we're going to talk about today. So there's two types. There's non-modifiable, so things like our age, sex, family history. So we're not going to be talking about those today. Those aren't in our control. We'll be talking about modifiable risk factors. So behaviors like our diet, exercise, and conditions such as diabetes. Also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to ask away. I have no problem taking questions during. But we'll talk about how we start from risk factors and we get to chronic diseases. So we have the non-modifiable risk factors, like I said. So for some diseases, your age, your sex, your gender, all that will determine your risk for a certain disease. But then we also have things like sedentary lifestyle, poor diet. Those lead to our conditions like diabetes or high blood pressure. And from there, we lead to a whole host of chronic diseases. Heart conditions to cancer. There. So it's kind of like a little linear pathway you'll see. These are the most prevalent common chronic diseases. We'll talk more in depth about the first four. They're most prevalent across Canada, but all eight share quite a few common risk factors that we can address today. So to start with cancer, these are the most common four in Canada, with lung cancer being prevalent, like top cancer for men and women. So cancer, we accumulate damage to our cells from things like tobacco smoke or the sun, and those lead to mutations. So then our cells start dividing uncontrollably, and that leads to cancer. Type 2 diabetes is when our body no longer responds to insulin appropriately. So insulin signals to the body there's glucose when we eat something like a carb. And when that insulin no longer functions properly, we can't store the glucose as energy. So it ends up staying in our blood. We have high blood glucose, which leads to those symptoms of diabetes. Next is cardiovascular disease. So our heart pumps blood throughout our entire body, full of nutrients for our cells, for all sorts of purposes so that we can be healthy and function. But when we have things like high blood pressure, causes damage to those vessels, that can lead to things like heart attacks or even more stroke where the blood flow is completely stopped altogether. And then lastly is lung disease. So you're probably familiar with the term COPD. It's an umbrella term for a whole host of lung diseases, and as well as there's disorders like sleep apnea and asthma. So for all three of those, the underlying factor in most cases is tobacco smoke, whether that be secondhand exposure or direct exposure. Yes.
With the regulations that have been put in place with regards to smoking establishments, have we seen a drop in the rate of cancer in terms of lung cancer?
Definitely we have. There's been a huge drop. Those numbers are still, higher than we'd like to see. So we're still looking at ways to expand. So Smoke-Free Ontario only covers a certain extent. And actually that's where my work at the health unit is. I'm doing tobacco prevention. So extending our bylaws to cover areas not covered under Smoke-Free Ontario, just to add an extra layer of protection, especially for those who don't smoke, right? You want to prevent that secondhand smoke when you're not in control of it.
Follow-up question. With the marijuana being legalized, is there a correlation that there should be in the future a greater propensity of cancer? Lung cancer?
Yeah, I'm not sure the extent of it, but definitely there's a lot of similarities. Anytime you're inhaling some sort of combustible smoke and you're damaging your lungs, there's always a risk there associated with it. I don't have exact facts and figures on cannabis smoke, but that's another area that my department is looking at and trying to increase the regulations to make it harder to obtain cannabis, especially with legalization, and just promoting the fact that it's not great for our health.
And do you look at vaping as well?
Yes, and that is a huge area that we're looking to tackle in conjunction with our healthy schools teams. We know vaping is an issue in high schools and even grade schools now, and that's something that we're looking to target and change. It's difficult because it's seen as something that maybe is the norm or cool, so it's definitely hard to educate them on the risk factors. They might not see it as necessarily dangerous or as dangerous as a cigarette. So, yes, those are all excellent questions, and hopefully we're going to tackle these in 2023. That's what our planning season just covered, so stay tuned for that. Anything else?
So does that mean you go out to like schools, aka like university, high school and all that kind of stuff? Are the programs being made, or how does that all
Yeah,
work?
so we do, there's a bit of an age differentiation, so that's where our healthy schools teams, they'll go into elementary and secondary schools. They do presentations with vaping toolkits, they give the educators information, they present to the students. We're trying to get in touch with school boards to kind of put in some additional policies, especially with the winter months, they're vaping in the bathrooms. And then as far as post-secondary schools, that'll be kind of more chronic disease, so our department, just having relationships with the universities, building policies and some sort of supportive environment. It's a little bit different on that scale because we're looking at a larger scale, but yeah, we definitely do go in community and educate on that.
Is there any studies have shown that vaping is worse or better than tobacco smoke?
So we are still looking at the literature because it's so new. We don't have a lot of long-term data on it. We do know that it's similar. You're getting similar damage to your lungs. For adolescents, it's 18, especially harmful for the developing brain. So it can lead to behavioral issues, issues with executive functioning. So your motivation, your control, concentration. So long-term, it's still a little bit unknown, but we do know short-term right now, it's not great. There's also something, I don't know if you've heard of E-Valley, which is like a new sort of disease associated with vaping. It's not super common, but there's still that risk. Anything else? I know it's a popular one.
Yeah.
So then there's these other four: arthritis, osteoporosis, mental health disorders, and dementia. I didn't want to go too in-depth, but we'll show some common risk factors on this slide for all of them. So you might have seen them on the side. We talked about tobacco. I'm just going to give a few little notes on this page. When we talk about body mass index, it's just an indicator that we use for healthy body weight. It's not necessarily accurate, so I would recommend talking to your healthcare provider for what's appropriate for you. And then for high blood pressure and cholesterol, we won't address them directly, but these are things we'll target through diet and exercise. And then lastly is stress. I don't think stress is talked about enough, but it does affect all parts of our body, all systems, and it leads to a whole host of health problems. So it's important to talk about. So what can we do to address these risk factors, prevent these chronic diseases, delay them, or even slow down their progression? The first, I think the most major, tobacco, we all kind of saw that, everyone had questions, so it's super important and it's a huge one. It's the leading cause of preventable disease and mortality. So the best thing you can do is, if you're a current smoker, try and reduce your risk or quit altogether if you can, or stay smoke-free and just reduce your risk of secondhand smoke exposure. Now with the Windsor Essex Health Unit, we have an internal cessation program. We offer 16 weeks of free nicotine replacement therapy in the form of the patch. There's also gum, I believe, to supplement that. But if you want to know more or enroll, you can call our phone number at this extension. This is our department. We also have a contact page on our website. You can send us an email. Along with that nicotine replacement therapy, we also have one-on-one counseling over the phone. It's an awesome program. Definitely recommend it. And yes, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know more.
Does that target vaping as well, or just,
So as of right now, we are only eligible to deliver it to those who use cigarettes. We're hoping it's supposed to be extending soon to those who use cigarettes and vaping. Unfortunately, right now, it's not for exclusively those who vape. There's a whole chain of command that we have to go through, but the process is moving along, so hopefully within the next year we can see that. Okay, the next thing we want to do is be physically active every day. But what does that look like? For adults, the Canada Movement Guidelines suggest 150 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity. When you say vigorous, moderate to vigorous, that's something where you might have a harder time having a conversation. So you're biking, swimming, aerobics, jogging, or doing some sort of sports, tennis, squash, things like that. Getting your heart rate up quite a bit. You also want to make sure we're doing a lot of walking, so anything a little bit lighter physical activity, throwing that in there every day, trying to limit our sedentary behavior. We work a desk job, I know I do, trying to get up as frequently as we can. And then once you're done off the clock, just trying to be mindful of screen time, because that also leads us to sit a little bit longer than we want to. In addition to that, some resistance training or strength training about 2 days a week is wonderful. Helps build bone and muscle. Those are two words that I mixed up there. Bone and muscle density. That's it. And that doesn't have to just be weight training. That can also be Pilates, heavy yard work. There's other ways to get that resistance training in. And then as we age, it's really important to start to incorporate flexibility and balance training to help prevent with falls. So things like yoga, Tai Chi, or just even stretching are wonderful options. Okay, so when it comes to a healthy diet, I can sit here and tell you eat some healthy food, don't eat processed food, but that's not really gonna do it. So when we talk about a healthy diet, I like to aim for our 3 macronutrients, so our protein, fat, and carb in every meal, and then some fiber as well, so that's our fruits and vegetables. And they're not just good for us, protein building muscle, but fat, carbs, and fiber in that, around that protein, they're gonna help keep us satiated for longer. We're not gonna wanna overreach for those snacks. I know with the holidays coming up, it's really hard not to eat those Christmas cookies. I have about 6 a day, if I'm being honest, so it's a little bit tough, but everything in moderation. And then mindful eating habits. So taking time maybe away from computers or TV to eat our meals, eating with people, so maybe in a social event, or cooking your own food can be fun, relaxing, and enjoyable. And then whenever possible, making water our drink of choice, just limits sugar intake and any sort of caffeine. So it's a great option. Yes.
What is better for you? I've heard different conflicting reports. Artificial sweeteners versus natural sweeteners.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research just myself because I was interested as well. Are they necessarily bad for you? The research really can't say. I prefer natural sugars. You're just going to have, there's less risk. There's some linked studies. The quality of the studies it's questionable. But if I had to choose, I would pick natural sweeteners. First, they taste better. But with all artificial sweeteners, your body kind of doesn't recognize it, natural or artificial. That's why they're 0 calories. You can't really break them down. Is sugar terrible? Yes and no. Maybe if you're diabetic, I would lean more towards the artificial or natural sweeteners. But a little bit of sugar here and there, it's not terrible. Yes.
I think one of the problems, though, is sugar is so insidious in food.
Yes.
It's loaded into just about everything. So
Salt.
you might just say, okay, I'm having this 1 teaspoonful of sugar here,
Yes.
and that's all I had today. No, you had tons of it everywhere else. And,
Exactly.
you know, one of the things I heard was we got overly concerned about fats when really we shouldn't be looking at sugar.
Yeah, and I think that with every diet culture, we kind of focus on one little aspect. So that's a great thing. The Canada Food Guide recommends reading the nutrition labels so you kind of know what you're eating. Just being mindful of that. With anything that you buy at a store that comes in a packaging, there is a chance there's going to be those added sugars. So limiting that whenever possible. Or if you're making yourself, you know, opting for honey or maple syrup rather than sugar directly, that's another way to kind of cut out the sugar.
I was gonna add to that about honey, because honey also, especially if it's local, will also help you with allergens and things like that. So over and above this part.
Yes.
So to me, I'm thinking natural sugars, whether they come in fruit form of sorts, the body recognizes it. And the honey part, it also helps your immune system and things like that from what I've understood over the years. So
Definitely.
whenever I add sugar, it's like a half a sugar, it's a raw sugar, or it's at home, it's honey, because you can't get honey everywhere.
Yeah.
That would be probably the ideal way to get sugar in some intake.
I agree.
Right.
And honey never goes bad, so that's my favorite part about it.
Yeah, if it crystallizes, you can remelt it down a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't expire. It's got great antibacterial properties, so it's great for our immune system. Also, everything that we're talking about today, not only great for chronic disease, but for infectious disease as well. Keeping our body healthy, keeping our immune system strong. So that's, thank you for that. Yes.
Not related to food or much of what you're talking about, but
Of course not.
I'm about to get a flu shot today. I'd like your thoughts on the flu shot and the increasing resistance to getting it.
All right, vaccines are awesome. Flu shot is great. You can get it. There's always that chance you might feel a little ill under the weather after it. But anything you can do to protect yourself, especially now when there's COVID, RSV, the flu, there's everything going on. I think it's just an extra step of precaution that you can take. I need to get mine still too.
Okay. Thank you.
We hear a lot about RSV. It seems to be more prevalent or more harmful for younger kids.
Yes.
But do adults get affected by this as well?
They do, yes. I don't have the numbers for Windsor, Essex. It's just not my department, but yeah, there are adult cases as well. Yes.
Mary Lou might not.
Sorry.
Mary Lou has the number, so
Oh,
she's retired now. She's
oh, thank you. Okay, and then next thing we can do is limit our alcohol intake. So low risk guidelines. There's supposed to be semicolons there, so not 15. But for women,
Yeah, I noticed that.
it's
I'm on week 15.
2 drinks a day, yeah, week 15 of 2 drinks a day. But no more than 2 is recommended. Occasions, they bump it up to 3 and men, 3 a day, occasions 4. For a total, during the week, 10 for women, 15 for men. But again, low risk doesn't mean no risk. So the less the better with alcohol. I think it's a little bit more harmful than we all think. It does damage ourselves a little bit there. So less the better, but of course it's the holidays. We're all gonna have a glass or 2. So there's no harm in that.
Now, if Terry, for example, has the 6-ounce glass of wine,
Yes,
that's a drink,
yes.
not the 12-ounce.
That'll do too. That'll put you at your daily limits.
Terry, because if I say a drink, like everybody says, well, you know,
Yes.
mine is a goblet, I fill that out.
Great question.
Daryl fills up for her.
So yeah, this doesn't count for free pouring at home. It's more standard drinks when you're out, it's a little bit easier. So pint of beer, 6-ounce glass of wine, or 1.5 ounce of a mixed drink of like a hard liquor. Which I know when we're all at home, we're definitely exceeding that, but the holidays, we'll bump it up to our occasion number, and then when the holidays are over, we'll try and get back down. Okay, and then again, maintaining a healthy weight. So everything we just talked about, limiting your alcohol, making sure we're having a nice balanced meal, trying to limit our sedentary behavior and be very active. Those are all going to help with maintaining a healthy weight. Again, so talk to your healthcare providers. What one healthy diet is for somebody might not be for somebody else. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to diet and exercise. We also all have different limitations for our bodies. So trying to figure out what works best for us. And that's best done through a healthcare provider. And lastly is managing our stress. So getting some quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours. When you say quality, you don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night. You want to make sure you're falling asleep pretty easily. So things like being in a dark room, limiting your screen time before bed, those will help. What will also help is limiting our intake of stimulants. So caffeine in the form of coffee, tea, pop, hot chocolate, dark chocolate, those things. This will help us sleep better. Caffeine stays in your body for quite a long time. So even if we're having that one in the afternoon, it's still in your body by the end of the night there. Make time for yourself is another one. So if we're trying to get our exercise in, maybe going for a walk, having that time for just you, reading a book, doing something you enjoy. Doesn't matter what it is, making time for yourself. Along the same lines, learning to say no, whether that be at work or in your home life. We all have obligations, but we all have to make sure that you're taking that time for yourself. That means learning when to say no, but that's okay. That's what we have our friends and family to help, ask for help, our colleagues. So just
Terry, I just don't know how to do that.
no. I can see that being an issue, yeah. That's why you just gotta recruit some more members. And then talking about it. So that can be with a professional, but that can just be with your friends, your Rotary Club, if you'd like, going on a walk, chatting about life. Just nice to get it out to vent. It just, you feel a physical release. So those are some things you can do to manage your stress. And lastly is getting screened and tested regularly. So once we hit about 50, every 2 years for women, getting screened for breast cancer, men for colorectal cancer. Talk to your healthcare provider. They'll be the ones to help you out with that. And if you notice any signs or symptoms, maybe additional precautions for screening and testing as well. Again, yes, make sure you consult with the physician. So I know I threw a lot at you today. I talked a lot. If you forget everything, that's okay. I just want you to remember these 3 things. 1, there's risk factors in our control. So we do have control over our health, and there's things that we can do to make it better. So preventing disease, delaying disease, or slowing its progression. 2, start with small changes. There was, I don't know, 8 different recommendations up there, each with their own little subset. It's a lot. So pick one you think is the best for yourself, one you think you can stick to, and start with that. Then keep going if you can. And then lastly, I said it a bunch, but talking to our healthcare provider, I can only make certain recommendations, but beyond that, I'm not a professional in physical activity or nutrition. So speaking to somebody who is, they can make the best recommendations for you. I think that is it for me. And any questions?
Can you give us an update as to what's happening with COVID? Is it on the uptick? Yeah, I mean, we've had a certain number of vaccinations in this community. Is it helping or are we still going back to the period where you have to wear a face mask and social distance and wash our hands 20 times a day?
Hand washing, I think, is super important. We should all be doing it as much as we can. Won't help just with COVID, but any sort of infectious disease. So definitely never stop that. As far as vaccinations go, I think that we're seeing these rises again because the booster uptake is a little bit lower. With this colder weather, it's a little bit easier. There's a few things going on right now. As far as masks, the health unit hasn't made any official mandates for masks. I honestly don't see it. It might be more of a political thing, so I don't. But like the government will get the final say on that. We do recommend it if you're in a crowded area and you are a little bit more susceptible. But as far as the numbers go, I haven't again been on top of that with my permit. It's a little bit easy to be ignorant to that. But yeah, just definitely making sure that you're taking all the precautions yourself that you can take. And again, it's recommended to wear a mask. You don't have to, but I do encourage hand washing and distancing if you can, and especially if you have any symptoms, COVID or not, maybe making sure you stay home if you can until the symptoms are a little bit better, or just staying a little bit distance if you can. So.
One of the things that came to mind when you said risk factors that you can control, not just eating and things like that. Well, early prevention, you touched upon it. Yeah, not early prevention, early detection, whatever. So that's obviously a big recommendation too, right?
Yes, and that'll go
Because
along with your screening and your testing. Yeah, so that'll help. Now, we only screen and test for certain things because it would be very costly and it might not make the most sense to test everybody for everything. So because there's those age restrictions on the testing when we start regular testing, because of those non-modified risk factors. So once you reach a certain age, your risk increases. If you also have these risk factors we talked about, you're at an even higher risk. So it's just really important that we're screening people that are within those higher risk groups. And that's why we do regular screening for breast and colorectal cancer.
Would it be, again, colorectal cancers, because a lot of times doctors won't recommend anything to anybody or suggest. So can you as a client, patient, kind of not demand, but, ask for it and say, look, I mean, this, that, can I, in the family, I have history of this and this, because sometimes they have, just go, oh, you're okay, or we don't go and get a yearly or every 2-year kind of checkup until something's wrong.
Yes.
And then by that time, could it have been prevented if they found something 2 years before or something like that? Is what I'm kind of getting at.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't hesitate. This is your health. It's in your hands and your control. So I know it's difficult, but yes, definitely saying I would like to be screened for this or this. I've noticed this irregularity. I would like to get that checked out. And I'm not in a risk factor for some of these things, and I still been vocal because you know your body best, so you'll know when it changes. But definitely talking to them. I know it's easy for them because it's super quick. They have a lot of patients. So yeah, making sure that you're taking those matters into your own hands. And that's where we in public health come into play, is prevention, right? Once you're at, in the healthcare system, you might have already had these issues. So we're trying to prevent you from even getting to that point. And that's where the screening comes in.
Don't go see Ellie.
Want to see her here.
Yeah.
What does public health do for the seasonal or migrant worker population in Essex County?
For that population specifically, I wouldn't have the best answer. I know that whenever we're looking at, so my area is chronic disease. If we're looking, everyone's assigned their own area. I'm in tobacco. If I find that that is a priority population for my area, then we're going to do interventions that directly impact that group, whatever that may be. I know there is some work with migrant workers. I can't remember which department, but yes, we always we have scans, there's always surveillance, there's data, we're looking at who's the most vulnerable and what specific interventions can we do to help with that population.
One quick follow-up, does the public health unit, do you guys levy fines for those that are smoking in a workplace?
So yes, you can submit complaints online, and all of our officers, they will follow with 100% of those complaints. The smoke-free bylaws, for like public Ontario, they don't allow smoking in indoor workplaces. It's up to individual workplaces to stipulate how close you can be outside. So technically, it's not covered. You can smoke outside of the building unless your workplace has a policy or it's a public building. Those are protected outside of it for a certain distance. But yes, if you do have a complaint, someone's violating, on our website under tobacco and vaping or smoking and vaping, you can register a complaint, and our tobacco and vaping enforcement officers will follow up. Yes, they do issue fines. Question over there? Yes.
I just had a comment.
Yeah.
You know, when, a lot of what you were saying on the screens, talking about your healthcare provider. I mean, there is an issue with that.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if many of you run into it, but I'm a physio, and a lot of my patients, they're not even seeing their physicians in person anymore. And I feel that a lot is being missed. It's, you know, the physician can't see, you know, they've lost weight, or they're looking pale, or they're, you know, or whatever. And so I don't know that there's anything the health unit can do. You know, I know there's a kind of petition going around from the medical for the government to up our funding, et cetera, because that's part of it. But I don't know, do you ever hold education sessions for your family physicians in terms of, you know, why is this happening? Is there any data as to why many physicians are, you know, you get into medicine, you know, you're going to come across a couple sick patients every year. You know, why after COVID sort of settled that they can't see patients in person is astounding.
Yeah, as far as the health unit, I don't know that that's something in our control. It's always something that I've been very aware of and proponent about, because I was pursuing med school for those reasons. We don't have enough GPs. If we do have GPs, they don't want to stay. But it's a difficult process to get in. We don't have the funds to keep hiring more or make these programs bigger to accept more students. So I think there's a lot of bureaucracy behind it, and it's got to probably be some sort of policies. It's a bit higher up, probably above our heads to see that change, but it's impacting us because we're seeing those data shoot.
Yeah, because I mean, you're doing what you can, the good work that you can, but it's just like, you know, then there's that other piece that's really falling short, and that's not a good thing.
No, not at all. But while we're on that, I'll plug nurse practitioners, because I don't think they get enough love. Like, you can also, those can be your primary care practitioner as well, and they're fantastic. But yeah. So.
Oh, hey,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I want to thank you for coming up this morning and giving presentation to us. It's very interesting what we have to look at, especially at our age group, how we should be taking better care of ourselves. That's really interesting. And we're making sure that you're going to be healthy, representing you with our very first study. Thank you. That's
Here, isn't that sweet?
Why don't you get up here?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
Who are those masked people? All right.